take a network break. I'm Drew Conry Murray.
I'm John Burke.
Help yourself to a virtual donut as we dash through this week's IT news. John is away, so John is here as our guest analyzer. We got stories on a Cisco Nvidia partnership, Juniper opening the door to third-party LLMs, Google running a preview of post-quantum encryption, some follow-up, and more. A quick message from our sponsor today, Megaport. What if deploying a global network took less time than brewing your morning coffee? With Megaport, it does. Megaport's software-defined network lets you spin up private, high-speed cloud connectivity in under 60 seconds without the bottlenecks of traditional provisioning. Connect instantly to AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and over 900 data centers. Whether you're connecting co-located or cloud-based infrastructure, Megaport delivers secure, low-latency connections on demand up to 100 gigabits per second. Start now at megaport.com/packetpushers, and if you're a U.S. listener, for a limited time, you can grab a free Megaport t-shirt with the promo code packetpushers, all one word. So head on over to megaport.com/packetpushers and grab yourself a free t-shirt. John, let's kick it off with we've got a red alert.
Absolutely, we do. This week's red alert is the MITRE cybersecurity tool that has a remote code execution vulnerability. The irony is rich.
It really
among
is.
this week's 1,250 CVEs, featuring 194 critical ones, i.e. scoring 9.5 or more out of 10, and the 15 that score a perfect 10, this one stood out, CVE 2025-27634, which was published on February 24th. It warns of a remote code execution vulnerability in MITRE's red teaming tool, Caldera. Specifically, that in the versions running through 4.2.0 and in version 5.0.0 before the 35BC06E release, the dynamic agent compilation functionality can be triggered remotely to download, compile, and run arbitrary code at the same level of privilege as the server via a crafted web request to the server's dynamic agent API. So folks who are deploying Caldera and haven't specifically disabled that functionality need to get current on the version, and if that's not possible, need to take network level steps to protect that API port from access by the outside world.
Hurts a little bit when they go after the actual security tools, but a common attack vector. We do have links in the show notes if you want to go get more details, if you need to go take some care of some things.
Absolutely.
Before we hit the news, just a couple of follow-ups from last week's show. First, a little bit of a pronunciation dispute. In the last episode, we talked about Microsoft's new quantum chip called Majorana 1. It's named after an Italian physicist. And a listener wrote in to say, as I'm sure the hosts know by now, Majorana is pronounced Majorana. It would be a gift to acknowledge the error so listeners don't sound silly on their next team Zoom call. Jana weighed in on our internal Slack to say that as a native Italian speaker, her pronunciation is correct. John, I don't really have a pony in the circus. Do you want to weigh in?
I didn't either, except I bothered to look it up after we got the comment. And
nice.
Merriam-Webster agrees with Jana that it's Majorana.
Majorana, okay. I mean, probably what's going to happen is however Microsoft folks pronounce it is what's going to take hold. But at least maybe Jana gets a moral victory somewhere. Moving on, our second correction. Last week, we reported on Apple's C1. This is a 5G modem that Apple built in-house, and it's putting into its iPhone 16e. One benefit of the chip is its power efficiency, but it comes with trade-offs, such as not supporting power-hungry features like Wi-Fi 7. However, one advanced feature it does support is TDD networks, and thanks to Jimmy for reaching out on the Packet Pusher Slack to me to update us on this. TDD stands for time division duplex, and using TDD, uplink and downlink communications are sent on the same frequency, but they're separated by a time interval, so it enables more efficient spectrum use, but that synchronization requirement can be taxing on the phone's processing and power consumption. So it was initially reported it wasn't supporting TDD. It is. Links in the show notes if you want more. All right, diving into the news, Cisco and Nvidia have announced a partnership that will see Cisco's Silicon One ASICs go inside Nvidia Spectrum Ethernet switches instead of Nvidia's own switch ASIC. The deal is also going to see Cisco port its NXOS network operating system to run on Nvidia's Spectrum Ethernet ASIC, so essentially a white box deal where Cisco's NOS is going to run on Nvidia networking hardware. To my mind, this partnership is clearly aimed at the enterprise market, dominated by Cisco. It gives Nvidia an easier route into this market to sell Ethernet gear to enterprise customers building out AI infrastructure, and also help Cisco keep its hold on the enterprise data center.
Yeah, I can't see much to argue with there. Enterprises who are building out management and operations around NXOS will be happy to be able to have that OS run on third-party switchgear, which they may be getting for other reasons, and that will make it easier for them to have a seamless management portfolio and infrastructure.
Yeah, I also see it as a feather in Cisco's cap because the company gets to say its Silicon One ASIC is the only partner silicon running inside NVIDIA's Spectrum X switches aside from NVIDIA's own custom silicon. And a little background, NVIDIA acquired Mellanox. Mellanox makes its own ASICs and SmartNICs, and it also sold both InfiniBand and Ethernet networking gear. InfiniBand had been the network transport of choice for HPC and AI. Ethernet is making incursions, so it's one of the reasons I think NVIDIA bought Mellanox.
I will just note that Ethernet's been making incursions against InfiniBand for at least 8 or 9 years, and yet we're still in an InfiniBand world in a lot of these AI clusters.
Right. It's true, but there are definitely efforts like UEC, the Ultra Ethernet Consortium, looking to make Ethernet more suitable for AI. And you've got the ASIC makers, including Broadcom, adding features, and Cisco, adding features directly into their ASIC silicon to make it more suitable for AI workloads with techniques like, packet spraying, taking Ethernet frames, turning them into cells so you can get more efficient use of links and so on. One thing that occurred to me is I feel like it helps Cisco build a kind of moat against data center incursions from Arista. So if an enterprise is looking at new builds of their own AI infrastructure, I think NVIDIA and Arista would have been well placed as potential disruptors. Now Cisco has even more reason to say, stick with us, don't leave the farm. Whether you want the NVIDIA silicon, you can run Cisco on top of it. If you are comfortable with Cisco's ASIC, you can get that too, but still buy an NVIDIA switch that has their Bluefield DPUs, that SmartNIC for added capacity on the switch. John, any other thoughts?
Well, I'm just wondering why NVIDIA is not talking up this deal very much.
I did notice, I looked around, NVIDIA, they'll put out a press release on anything like at the drop of a hat, and I could not find anything from NVIDIA's official press or blog sites with a release out on this. I don't know, are we overreading the tea leaves here? But it feels a little bit like kind of a mean girl move not for NVIDIA to not put out a press release about this.
Yeah, I'm intrigued as to whether it's an aggressive mean girl type snub or more of an embarrassed kind of a snub. Like, I don't want to mention the fact that now we're doing this, so we'll just do it and let it pass.
Yeah, I guess that's a feel like, obviously, NVIDIA wants to sell its switches to as many people as it can. So this is a good partnership for them because Cisco is, an express route right into the enterprise market if enterprises are thinking of building out their own AI infrastructure. So great for them. So I don't know why they'd be embarrassed about putting their own press release out about this. So if anybody's got any insight on that, you can always hit us up, packetpushers.net /FU.
Would be intrigued to hear the theories. So also happening kind of on the QT this week, Microsoft has been canceling planned data center expansions. And this did not come to us from Microsoft press releases, but rather from a report by the investment bank TD Cowen, which is seeing evidence that Microsoft has canceled numerous leases and or decided not to follow through as planned on converting what are called statements of qualifications, or SOQs, into leases that would have added hundreds of millions of megawatts of data center capacity to Microsoft's data center and presumably AI infrastructure, despite Microsoft's pledge to spend $80 billion on AI infrastructure this year. In the past, they have converted nearly 100% of their SOCs into leases. So this is a significant variation from past behavior for them. Network World reports that a Microsoft spokesperson said on Monday that, quote, "Thanks to the significant investments we have made up to this point, we are well positioned to meet our current and increasing customer demand," unquote, and that they had added more capacity in 2024 than in any prior year.
So I can see why this might raise some eyebrows because market watchers are, I think, keen to spot any early warnings that the AI spending bonanza is coming to an end. And that's, I think, one way to interpret this. I am not myself convinced that this is that signal. John, do you have feelings?
A couple. One is that it may not be the end of the bonanza, but it may signal at least a dip. It may be a temporary dip, but a dip in the investment curve as folks who are looking on at what DeepSeek did in terms of maximizing their use of limited hardware to deliver a highly functional model, then turning the spotlight back on their own development plans and seeing what they could do to leverage some of those strategies in their own AI development and reduce both the physical footprint and the power draw required to deliver a given level of function. I think they may say, well, let's not keep, shoveling coal into this particular fire until we figure out if we can increase the efficiency of the furnace.
Yeah, I will say Microsoft and others are under growing pressure to demonstrate that these AI investments are actually going to yield commensurate returns. It doesn't seem like there's indicators that that's happening quite yet. So maybe this is a little bit of a dip, a slowdown in let's stop shoveling so much coal. Still plenty of coal to be shoveled. And we'll talk about that later when we get into Nvidia's financial returns. But yeah, an interesting data point for folks to chew on.
And I think it's probably also keeping in mind that given the Project Stargate announcements last month and Apple's big AI data center announcement just 2 weeks ago, was it? Or even last week, Microsoft may be pausing to consider where it's going to make its next investments, specifically geographically where, and backing away from older deals as they look at that, because they've pledged to spend fully half of that $80 billion in the U.S. So they may be thinking pretty carefully about where they want to do that now, instead of just anywhere they can get the capacity.
Makes sense. Yeah, and where capacity is available, we're hearing.
True.
Yeah, there's definitely restraints on physical capacity, power generation, cooling, and so on. So, moving on, Juniper Networks is extending its Mist AI capabilities to its routing platform via its Paragon software. Juniper says the AI will analyze routing telemetry to spot potential problems like route flaps, black holes, and other routing issues. The AI is going to provide alerts and recommend actions to network operators. Juniper, of course, has been extending its Mist AI capabilities across its portfolio, started in the WLAN, moved into wired. So no surprise it's being integrated into the router line. John, the thing that caught my eye in this announcement is that Juniper is also now opening itself up to third-party LLMs. It already has its own Marvis virtual assistant that lets you use natural language queries to run status checks and ask questions and so on. Now it's providing what it calls the LLM connector. The LLM connector behaves as a proxy or go-between for this third-party chatbots and Juniper's back-end systems to provide conversation-based support. Juniper says it's validated third-party LLM platforms, including Azure OpenAI, and Olama. Anything stand out to you there?
For one thing, the absolute absence of DeepSeek, and I don't expect to ever see that show up. I'll be intrigued to see how far people want to take that as opposed to using the native functionality. I'm not seeing any indication right now that any of the conventional LLMs are going to get into any kind of dominance position as the natural language interpreters for humans working against their networks. So opening up is it's a good gesture because Juniper's always been good about opening to standards. There are no standards in this space, obviously, but I think it's a gesture in the right direction that probably won't wind up getting much uptake beyond whichever massive customers initially requested this.
Yeah, I did ask Juniper about this. They said it did come from a customer request, so I assume it's a customer who made a significant investment in some other LLM and wanted to put that investment to use. And also, I should note that LLM connector only works with Juniper's WAN AI capabilities, so it's not opening up the LLMs to other things like the WLAN, where Mist has a huge presence. So Juniper's still protecting its mode mostly. All right, a quick pause to tell you about our sponsor today, Megaport. With Megaport, you can provision high-speed connections to data centers, service providers, AI providers, and internet exchanges all over the world with just a few clicks. Megaport provides access to more than 930 locations in 26 countries, allowing you to expand your network and grow your business quickly. Whether you're connecting co-located or cloud-based infrastructure, Megaport delivers secure, low-latency connections on demand up to 100 gigabits per second, so you can get private, secure, low-latency connections across the Megaport fabric. And again, you've got a choice of bandwidth options up to 100 gig per second. You can start now at megaport.com/packetpushers to see it for yourself. And for a limited limited time, U.S. listeners can grab a free Megaport t-shirt when you use the promo code PacketPushers, all one word. So check out megaport.com/packetpushers and don't miss out. Get a t-shirt for yourself now. Back to the news, John. You've got a story on Alkira.
Yeah, thinking of cloud networking, we've got Alkira adding load balancing to its cloud network offerings. It announced on February 20th that it has launched Load Balancer as a Service as a new option in its Network as a Service portfolio, in addition to Firewall as a Service and so forth. Customers will be able to choose from multiple load balancing vendors ultimately, starting right now with F5 big IPs and other vendors to follow. As with their other services, these load balancers will be deployed within Alkira's cloud exchange points, enabling full integration both into the customer-facing management console and with other services behind the scenes. So customers will be able to load balance traffic across clouds or across cloud regions within the same provider, or across hybrid infrastructures involving both on-premises and cloud resources.
Yeah, this makes a sensible addition, I think, to Alkira's cloud networking capabilities. They already, as you said, support third-party firewalls in the CXP, so it seems like part and parcel of a broader strategy. Folks need load balancing, and they're already on F5. Makes sense for Alkira to support that.
Yep, absolutely.
A couple of weeks ago, we reported on the UK government demanding that Apple provide a backdoor into Apple's advanced data protection tool, which provided end-to-end encryption for some kinds of data stored in iCloud. The UK wanted to get access to data encrypted with advanced data protection, not just for UK citizens, but for any Apple customer anywhere in the world. Rather than comply, Apple recently announced it would no longer offer advanced data protection in the UK. This will affect several data categories in iCloud, including iCloud Backup and iCloud Drive. That said, end-to-end encrypted services such as iMessage and FaceTime will remain end-to-end encrypted even in the UK. My take essentially is, Apple has been kind of a privacy leader in the tech space, and tip of the hat to them for me for sticking to their guns.
I'm impressed that they did too, and happy that they did. It's necessary, but I'm wondering if they're going to continue to, if the UK comes after secure messaging as well, and how the UK can justify going after one set of data streams, but not the others. So I'm interested to see how this evolves.
Yeah, it would be, I think, a huge demand from the UK government, because if it is end-to-end encrypted, Apple can say, look, we can't do anything about it because of the way end-to-end encryption works, which could mean Apple maybe, if the UK government becomes a stickler about it, does that mean Apple stops providing services in the UK? I don't know. It's going to be an interesting showdown. I mean, hopefully it doesn't get to that.
Yeah, I really hope it doesn't. And I'm sure all the iPhone users in England hope it doesn't as well.
Right.
Speaking of encryption, Google is now teasing its post-quantum encryption environment. It has announced that it is releasing in preview the option to use quantum-resistant encryption in its encryption key management service, Cloud KMS. Cloud KMS is what they use to generate, store, and manage the cryptographic keys that are used to encrypt and sign data in environments that use Google's cloud. To begin the process of shifting to quantum-safe classical encryption, in order to thwart folks who are deploying already the harvest now, decrypt later form of attack, or HNDL, against the day when they'll be able to decrypt classically encrypted data using cryptographically relevant quantum computers. I can't remember the acronym off the top of my brain. So Cloud KMS will now support FIPS 204 and FIPS 205 compliant quantum safe digital signatures. So they're using algorithms that will continue to provide security even against quantum computers in the future. Google will provide further support for and integration of post-quantum cryptography algorithms in software and in hardware in the coming year or two.
Yeah, I'm glad to see Google started on getting this rolled out. NIST has validated several algorithms that they say are, post-quantum encryption safe. They don't require quantum computers to use. They work on traditional computing, but they are resistant to decryption attacks by quantum computers. But it is going to take time to roll these algorithms out and support them across cloud services, firewalls, VPNs, browsers, et cetera. So great to see Google. I haven't heard a lot of other folks actually doing this. I don't know if Google's leading the charge. I'm sure others are looking at it, but good to see Google making some noise about the fact that they're doing it. I do hope they share their learnings with the broader community, because rolling these kinds of things out does take time, does have to be done right, and needs some bake-in time to get everybody comfortable with it. So glad to see they're getting started.
And they are definitely focused on sharing some of the critical stuff, because they are open sourcing it as they release it.
Oh, that's great. Okay, great. Yep. Yeah, links in the show notes if you want to find out more.
We also had some interesting developments from Red Hat. This last week, they have released OpenShift 4.18, which is adding user-defined networking, including BGP support, to OpenShift, which is, of course, Red Hat's Kubernetes environment. So among the networking upgrades that they're rolling out in the release, they have put into general availability what they call user-defined networking, or UDN, functionality, so that folks deploying in the environment can enable their own layer 2, layer 3, and local net segments, which can be either primary or secondary networks for the container pods or the virtual machines under management by OpenShift. The UDNs support common virtual machine networking use cases, like providing a permanent IP address for something throughout its entire lifespan, and providing a primary layer 2 network to enable live migration of VMs between nodes. UDNs will also boost security by automatically isolating segments from each other, and that is, of course, critical in multi-tenant environments, without requiring an admin-level policy to make it happen. You'll still need admin-level policies for finer-grained microsegmentations, but basic division of segments from each other will now happen at the user level. And so that's a win for folks deploying in those environments. It also, the new release of OpenShift also supports BGP as a routing protocol for UDN pods and VMs, and is evolving to provide full like Ethernet VPN support over BGP. So a big set of improvements in the Kubernetes networking landscape on the Red Hat side.
Awesome. Links in the show notes if you want to find out more. We'll wrap up by circling back to Nvidia. They released their Q4 and full year results. For Q4, Nvidia brought in revenues of $39.3 billion, up 78% from a year ago, a record for the company. Net income was $22 billion, up 80% over last year. For the full year, revenue was $130.5 billion, up 114% from a year ago, with a net income of $72.8 billion, up 145%. By business unit, its data center business, which includes GPUs for AI, had full year revenues of $115.2 billion, a company record, up 142% over last year. John, the good times are rolling.
They certainly are. And it's important to note that their nets are up by higher percentages than their grosses.
Right.
Which indicates that they're also getting more efficient at what they're doing, as well as just raking the money in hand over fist.
Yeah, they're frankly torrid results. I guess my question is, how sustainable are they?
It can't go on forever, but
so
let the good times roll.
Yeah, the good times roll. Yeah, at the moment, I guess Nvidia is well positioned to be selling shovels during the gold rush. So bank that money, because it's who knows how long it'll last. But for now, things are great. All right, that wraps up our episode. Thanks to our sponsor, Megaport. John, where can folks get more from you?
They can look for me on LinkedIn, and it's probably easiest to just search John Burke Nemertes LinkedIn, because my ID there is John-Burke-29084B3, because yes, there are a lot of guys named John Burke out there in this world.
Right, that's John Burke, Burke, by the way, but I'm sure you can find him on LinkedIn. I'm Drew Conry-Murray. I'm on Blue Sky True CM. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm blogging at packetpushers.net. Once again, thanks to our sponsor, Megaport. And as always, thank you Thank you for listening. If you've got comments, corrections, kudos, or critiques, you can let us know at packetpushers.net/FU. The FU's for follow-up. And by the way, Packet Pushers, the whole network has merch, a dozen podcasts you can subscribe to, an industry blog, 2 weekly newsletters, a community Slack group, a YouTube channel, even an IRC group, and more. You can find everything at packetpushers.net. It's all free with no login required. As always, thanks for listening.